Delavue rushed through the building where Argo assumed Sybil was. Z followed close behind looking for security or anything else that might hinder them. Z was still not fully convinced this was a good idea, as it was known that Sybil had eyes and ears everywhere. There was no way she didn't know they were coming. On top of that, everything was so quiet. The building felt completely abandoned. No Rumans, no workers, not even robots. Delavue had finally taken the reins, and Z wasn't going to slow her down or interrupt her now that she was finally focused and committed to something. While Z was unaware of the experiments Psy was doing on Delavue until recently, he had known her for quite some time, and he had never seen her like this. She had always been what the Magians called her, a wild card, an unpredictable agent of chaos. But this new version of her rushing ahead of him to find and defeat Sybil, this he had never even fathomed would be possible. Somewhere alongside them was what Delavue said was their secret weapon, a man named Argo who had been transported to a separate plane of existence indirectly by a negative reaction to Delavue's powers during one of Psy's experiments, a place that he called the Void. "We're close. This way." Delavue turned a corner and came to a sudden stop. Z rushed over to her to see what she was seeing. Up until this point, the entire building was just corridors and rooms with closed doors, abandoned as previously mentioned. But what was before them now was completely unexpected and almost appeared as if it was impossible to be a part of the same building. It was a giant wall of sorts with foggy glass windows that you couldn't see through, but you could tell something was happening on the other side. Bright lights and noises were coming from the room. Those noises were full of voices that none of them could make out. There was a singular door at the bottom in the center that looked like it was a combination of used tech parts. Like Sybil or whoever built this place had taken it apart and put it back together many times. "Careful," said Z. "We don't know what's on the other side of this." "Sybil has to be in there, right?" asked Delavue. "Do you think that door is locked?" Z stepped in front of Delavue now and approached cautiously. Nothing else has been up to this point. They all moved slowly together to the door. The wall was even more intimidating from the bottom of it. When Z and Delavue looked up, it seemed like the wall stretched on forever, with no ceiling in sight. Like it extended all the way up into the sky, yet they don't recall seeing it from the outside. Z put his hand on the handle of the door, and it turned when he turned it until it clicked. "Not locked," said Delavue behind him, but Z didn't take his eyes off the handle as he pulled open the door. When the three of them stepped inside, the lights and noises they heard from outside were amplified. In the farthest part of the room were numerous monitors set up on a wall that mimicked the large one outside of the room. Along the walls of the room leading up to the monitors were copies of Sybil, just standing there in a deactivated state. Just below the wall full of monitors stood another version of Sybil, with wires connecting her to the devices all around. The scene was terrifying on its own, but something you would expect from a cyborg goddess with eyes and ears everywhere. It was the images popping up and disappearing on the monitors that were the truly horrifying part of what they were experiencing. Some of the monitors high up on the wall displayed routine days in the lives of those living in Mecca. Some monitors showed the factories where Z and Delavue worked. Yet as they focused on the monitors closest to this version of Sybil at the helm of the devices, they saw parts of Magia. Point-of-view displays of Tiberius and the armies of Magia being completely decimated, the forests of the Glavolu burning. One monitor showed Psy on the floor of the sewers below Magia, on the ground unconscious or worse, with the bloody bodies of the oracles all around him. Another showed the waters below Claudius's villa in the Empire, where the body of Cero, the crocodile god, floated lifelessly in his own blood. The monitor right in front of this version of Sybil had the Emperor Claudius on it. He was pinned down by multiple copies of Sybil while one stood in front of him talking. The words of the one holding him were coming out of the Sybil that was in the room with them. History is determined by those left to record it, and I am the only one holding the pen. Delavue and Z stood there watching Sybil, basically frozen by the fact that this was a lot to take in. Sero was possibly dead, Magia was easily defeated, and the forests of the Glavolu were burning. The monster responsible was literally just a few feet away from where they were standing. Z was trying to come up with a plan in his head as quick as possible, and the best he could think of was pulling the wires from the machines to try to cut Sybil off from the rest of her clones. But before he could act, Sybil's head turned slightly, a sign that she had finally acknowledged them. "You made it," she said, almost as if she was a friend expecting them over for food and drinks. The wires disconnected themselves from Sybil, but the clones on the screens didn't stop what they were doing, so Z's initial plan wasn't a good one. She put her arms out. "What do you think of Mecca?" "A lot different from Magia, no? I always thought about opening up Mecca for visitors from Magia, but it seemed too risky. If I did do it, it would have been invite only. I'm not sure you two would have had the money to afford such a luxurious visit." "We're not here to talk about what you've done with the place," said Z. Entertaining the cyborg goddess was the only way to buy enough time for a plan. "I know," Sybil said with a sigh. "You're here as a last-ditch effort, a tiny glimmer of hope, a near-impossible chance that you can defeat me and save Magia. Just look behind me. There's already nothing left to save." Z shook his head. "Even if Magia is defeated, we still have to try to save the Rumans living in Mecca as well as the Rumans living on the rest of Ruma." Sybil laughed. "Save the Rumans in Mecca? From me? These people are living their best lives. As you know, I hear and see everything. I don't hear many complaints. As for the rest of Ruma, the sooner they stop believing in these weak emperors and false gods, the sooner they can be living like those here in Mecca. If anything, with the defeat of Magia, I just saved Skyla and I will save Ruma in due time." "So that's it?" Delavue finally spoke to Sybil. "You just go around killing the other gods and goddesses and proclaim yourself as Ruma's savior?" "I was hoping you would join the conversation," Sybil smiled as she turned to face Delavue. "Getting you fired from your factory job was fun. I had to let you know that I knew you were here somehow. I know all about you, Delavue. What a journey it has been." Delavue gave a devious smile of her own. "Too bad you won't be around to see where it goes from here." Sybil shook her head. "All of these conversations with Magians always turn into empty threats." Her words made the eyes on the Sybil clones along the walls light up. "Can't we just have some civil conversation and talk things out? Why must everything always end in murder?" Fine, have it your way. Let's get this over with." Z grabbed Delavue by the wrist and pulled her over to the door they came in from. Delavue went to open it, but now it wouldn't budge. Z touched a device on his wrist, and it transformed into a sword for him to use. "Stay here," he said to Delavue, then rushed forward, dancing his way through the Sybil clones with sword strikes that were way more effective than he anticipated. Between the sword strikes, he weaved in magical attacks that were of an electrical element. The lightning-based attacks short-circuited some of the clones and made clearing the room easier. Once the clones were dealt with, Z jumped at Sybil, swinging the sword down at her face, but the cyborg goddess caught him by the throat with ease. "Impressive. You put up more of a fight than your pathetic emperor, even. I was not expecting that." Sybil threw Z to the ground right in front of Delavue. "I guess that should be expected from the one spoken about in the Iron Prophecy." The confusion on Z's face was apparent to Sybil, so she once again smiled. "Oh, I'm sorry. I meant the one spoken about in the Iron Prophecy's pet." Sybil's eyes locked with Delavue's. "A Ruman blessed with Magian magic born in Mecca. You unintentionally teleported yourself as a baby to Magia, and no one ever said anything." Despite how serious everything was, Delavue couldn't help but whisper to Z on the floor, catching his breath in front of her. "I told you it could be a girl." Okay, Z said as he got back up to his feet. Sybil turned her head slightly. "Though seemingly stronger than Claudius, if this is what you have fighting your battles for you, then I'm afraid this prophecy is not going to come true." Delavue put her hand on Z's shoulder. He's not fighting for me. He's fighting with me. Delavue teleported both of them behind Sybil, then barreled into Sybil, knocking her slightly off balance before Z blasted her with his magic. The electricity overwhelmed Sybil's body as she crumbled to the ground. The robot side of her seemingly shut down and off. "It can't be that easy," said Z. He slowly walked over to her to see if her human side was breathing, but as he drew closer, the pieces of the other robots in the room began to break off and combine to form a much larger robot. This robot grabbed Z and threw him across the room, slamming him into the pods that held the Sybil clones. It walked over to Z to finish the job as the Sybil on the floor stood back up. "I am prepared for everything, Delavue. Simple magic, even of this variety, could never defeat a god like me." Delavue took a deep breath. "Argo, are you ready?" "I am sorry I can't get you out of there yet, my friend." Argo nodded even though no one could see him. "I understand what must be done." "Ah yes, the ghost." Sybil looked right at Argo where he was standing. "Did you think I wouldn't have a way to see him coming? He's actually why I knew you would arrive." Delavue acted surprised. "Then you must know what's coming next." "I'm always 2 steps ahead." Sybil began to say, but Delavue grabbed Argo, then teleported next to Sybil. She grabbed Sybil's wrist. "A foolish attempt," Sybil shouted. "We'll see about that," Delavue shouted back. "Let's go pay my ghost friend a visit." In a flash, they were gone. The giant robot about to attack Z stopped working and turned off. The Sybil clones visible on the monitors stopped moving. Z was left in a quiet, creepy room all by himself, with the remains of robots on the floor, and Delavue and Sybil nowhere to be found. "Delavue," he shouted. "Delavue! Argo!" He rushed to the door to try to open it, and to his surprise it opened. It took him some time to make his way out through the sewers they entered from. Tracing back the steps they took to get in the first place was difficult without Delavue and Argo there to help guide him, but he managed. The whole time he couldn't help but think about what had happened. Delavue had used Argo to teleport Sybil to the void, but how does any of that work? Would it keep Sybil trapped for long? Upon making his way to the outside of the building, he was shocked at what he had seen. The Rumans of Mecca were celebrating in the streets. Somehow they knew the cyborg goddess was gone. Meanwhile, Claudius lay on the ground of his villa, defeated and ready to accept fate as the clones of Sybil surrounded him. But with Sybil Prime missing, they all suddenly came to a stop. He struggled to get to his feet, bloody and beaten. Yet he knew, he could feel it. Sybil was somehow defeated, and Ruma would never be the same again.